Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial, and this is another part in my hair mini series in coloured pencil. And so the study we're going to go through today is drawing pink hair, but I'm not just going to be giving tips for that. I'm going to be giving tips on how to draw lots of unusual hair colours like pink, blue, purple, green, red, all of those sort of colours, because they can be a bit more challenging to pick the colours for. So I'm going to be giving my tips on that. But just before we start, if you guys do want to master realistic coloured pencil portraits, then make sure you check out my new course. Link is at the top of the description. If you want to get 15% off, you can use the code SAVE15 at checkout. But anyway guys, let's get into the tutorial. If you guys do want to see the real-time version of all 5 of these hair studies, then they are available for $9 patrons on my Patreon page. But let's get straight into this tutorial. So the colours that I'm using are the Prismacolors, and I'm using the Clay Rose and the Sepia. So these are great for the root colours of this because it's dark roots going into the pink colour. I'm also using the Salmon Pink and also the Deco Peach. So I choose a range of different pinks, not just one pink colour. I like to use a range. I'm also using the Blush Pink, and like I said, these are all Prismacolor pencils, but you can use any pencils you want. And I'm using the Warm Grey 20% and the Henna for some of those darker tones. And I am using the Caran d'Ache White just because I don't have the Prismacolor White, but you can use the Prismacolor White. I'm also using an X-Acto knife and 2 different types of erasers, the Tombow Mono eraser and the Faber-Castell ink eraser. And so I'm just going to go through the process of drawing this pink hair. But what I want to do in this video is not necessarily talk about the technique for drawing hair, because I've got so many videos on that, but I want to talk more about actually drawing unusual types of colours for hair, like pink, red, green, blue, purple, all of that sort of stuff, and my sort of process of going through picking colours for these hair colours. Because they're not conventional, it can be difficult to choose the colours that you want to use for these types of hair. So the first thing that I do when I'm approaching doing a weird type of colour hair, like a different type of colour, is I like to establish whether it is a cool or warm tone version of that hair colour. So what I mean by this is, for example, if you're drawing red hair, there's lots of different varieties of red hair. You can have that more cool toned red, like that purpley red type of colour, or you can have that warm tone red, that orangey, yellowy, more gingery red. And so it's important to establish first what hue of that colour are you going for. Same with something like pink hair. So again, you can have that more purple, cool tone pink, or that more reddy, yellowy, brassy type of pink. So it is important to establish this so that you can kind of identify what other colours you might need to include. You might not just be including pinks, but if you're doing cool tone pink hair, you might need to include some purples as well. And for example, if you're doing green hair, you could have that bluey green, or you could have that very yellowy, grassy green. So it's important to identify this because, for example, if you're doing more of a lime green, you might need to include yellows in there. But if you're doing a bluey green, then you need to include blues in that as well. So once you've established whether you're including cooler colours or warmer colours with that colour that you're doing, it's then important to identify the sort of range of values and contrast in your reference image. I definitely recommend using a reference image for you guys as well, so that you can get the details that you need to and look at each of the clumps of hair and get the sections accurate, and just use it for reference for the colours as well. Because you're going to get a more realistic colour choice if you're using a reference photo than you just trying to draw, for example, green hair out of the top of your head. You're probably going to default to using just generic green colours if you're trying to imagine green hair. Rather than if you had a reference image, you'll be able to see the subtle changes of colour and colours that might be included in the hair that you wouldn't have thought of, like bits of blue or bits of yellow, depending on what you're doing. So once you've established that, look at the highlights and shadows. So what is the lightest value in your hair colour and what is the darkest tone? And this will give you an inkling of what sort of variety of values you need to pick. So when you're choosing colours, you won't just be picking one pink colour. You need to pick some light pinks and some really dark pinks and some other colours to create those dark values. So it's important for you to swatch some of the lightest areas of your reference and the darkest areas to have in your mind an idea of what type of range of values you need for your colours when you're choosing them. So once you've got an idea of that, then it's important to create a colour chart of all of the possible colours that you want to use for your hair. So you might not use all of them, but just swatch down every possible colour that is a contender to use for your hair study. So for example, with this pink hair, I swatched down loads of different pinks from the Prismacolor set, and I also swatched down some more warm colours like the peachy type of colours because it was more of a peachy pink rather than a purpley pink. So it's important to swatch all of the possible colours, not just that colour that you're drawing, not just the green if you're drawing green hair, but also the yellows, those limey colours or those bluey greens. So create a chart of all of the possible colours that you might use, and then take that swatch of colours, take that colour chart and put it next to the reference and put them next to each other and see which colours best match up with your reference image. And like I said, you need to pick highlighted colours, mid-tones and those dark values. And so for example, you shouldn't really just default to using black for your shadows. A lot of people, when they're drawing weird kind of hair colours like red or purple or colours they aren't used to drawing, they default to black to darken up their shadows. And what's bad about this is it doesn't make your drawing look realistic, it makes it look flat, it doesn't make it look rich in values. And so you want to avoid just using black as a default to darken everything up. And so instead, for example, if you're drawing red hair, if you had really dark shadows for the red hair, you might want to use your dark red colours, but then also things like really dark purple or more like a navy blue or like a winey deep mulberry sort of purple colour or mauve sort of colour, and not just black. If you really do need to use black because it's genuinely really dark, then you can, but try to avoid using it as just your default colour. But try not to use black or grey to darken up your colours. Try to go for darker versions of the hair colour that you're drawing. And so when it comes to drawing different types of hair colour, it's not necessarily your technique that is going to change. No matter what hair colour I'm drawing, I always use the exact same technique, but what actually changes is just the colours that you're using. So I hope these tips help you actually identify and pick the colours for your hair. But when it comes to technique, I've done lots of different videos on the technique for hair, so check out those if you want to learn more about exactly my technique and process for creating this realistic pink hairstyle. But this video was more about picking the colours, which is something that's going to change when you're doing those unique kind of hair colours. And what I find that most people do as a mistake when they're drawing like colourful hair is they do it way too vibrant because they're just using those generic colours and those one tones of colours. They're not layering lots of different hues in there. They just pick like one red tone and colour their hair in like that and maybe add some highlights, but they don't use a range and layer lots of different rich tones, which gives you that really realistic looking hair colour. So I hope those tips did help you. I just want to talk a bit about the process that I'm doing. So I did start out with the roots. I created that brown sort of underbase layer. I do like to start with the shadows and getting in those darker values, so it helps to give sort of a structure to the hair. And then I just laid down more and more pink tones. As you could see, I used a variety of different pink shades and some more peachy pinks. So I used that salmon pink, which had a bit more of that orangey tone, and that adding that little hint of that warmer peach makes it look a lot more realistic and gives it more sort of richness to the colour of the hair. I also used some warm grey to transition between the roots and the pink hair, and that's another thing that you need to notice when you're drawing different hair colours is the transitions. So because I was drawing darker roots, there was a lot of transition between that and the pink. It didn't go straight from brown to pink. It wasn't a really harsh cut-off point. It was more of a subtle transition. So if you need to, for example, if you're doing like two-toned hair where it goes from like blue to green or anything like that, if there's more than one colour, make sure that you actually focus on fading between those two colours rather than it being a really harsh transition. So like I said, if you do want to learn more about mastering coloured pencil portraits and getting that realistic look and learning all of my techniques, then make sure you check out my course, which is Photorealistic Coloured Pencil Portraits. So you can use SAVE15 as the code at checkout to get 15% off the course. Make sure to check out that link so you can watch the course trailer to see exactly what is included in the course. And if you want to follow along with this hair study, then that is available in real time on Patreon. Anyway guys, that is it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new around here for more tutorials like this. But that's it from me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everybody!